Now, obviously, not everyone has the time to be a political candidate, the money, or the will. So, life intervenes. There are many factors that affect how much people participate. People, each of us, as we get more interested and more involved, have to decide where in life our political activity is going to be. Where in life do our civic our civic duties fall? Where? At what point of priority do we give to our civil responsibilities as citizens? Now, political ideology. We've talked about these. A political ideology is a systematic set of beliefs that explain how the world works and how it can change in a thoughtful, balanced, logical way. Systematic ideologies includes, I'll start with libertarian actually, item C. A libertarian is a person who believes most and most of all in personal individual liberty. That is the widest possible scope of action. A libertarian does not believe in the government interfering in a person's bedroom, a person's social life, and in that sense, the libertarians are harmonious with many liberals and progressives who want to allow people the widest possible latitudes in their personal lives, their sexuality, and so on. But libertarians tend to agree with conservatives that the government that governs best governs least, that a smaller government is better for liberty than a big government, that a government that does less is better for freedom than a government that does more for people, and that taxes and regulations should be as low as possible. And as much as possible, we should stick to the limits of the federal government described in the Articles of the Constitution. And the amendments, that's it, that's all. None of this other stuff that's sort of come in because of the Interstate Commerce Clause. So, libertarian. Conservatives, being one of them, conservatives tend to believe that the traditions of the society define that society. That the country is best when it reflects the values that have made the country successful and a place worth living in the past. And that means not only the kind of economic freedoms that a libertarian agrees to, smaller government, less regulation, lower taxes, more personal responsibility, more personal initiative, but conservatives also tend to believe in the traditional Judeo-Christian norms and values that have been typical of Americans from the time of its founding up through at least the 1960s and 70s as the dominant idea. So, moderates, who I don't have on here, are not really a systematic ideology. Progressives and liberals can be. Progressives and liberals tend to believe that equality is the most important virtue, and that societies tend to be unequal. They tend to be unequal in terms of money. Talented people or people who are born into wealthy families or people of certain demographic groups have certain privileged opportunities that other people don't, so government and society have to redistribute that privilege and compensate for it. So these are the people that tend to believe in white privilege as a reality, and they tend to believe that the government should intervene to make sure that that's not there. These people, liberals and progressives, also tend to believe that the government is useful at eliminating discrimination of all kinds. And we have liberals and progressives to thank for the elimination of Jim Crow laws in the South and for the establishment of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which makes it illegal to discriminate on the basis of race in the United States since the year before I was born. Liberals and progressives have expanded the opportunities of many people that were not heretofore within the leadership group. And they wish to continue doing this for even wider groups of people. So liberals and progressives would tend to think that people with non-traditional, non-binary sexualities, for example, need protection and need maybe affirmative action programs to help, or at the very least legal protections to avoid being discriminated against in any way, both overt or covert. Liberals and progressives tend to accept the argument that gender is a social construct and that therefore there is a fluid scale of genders, not simply male or female. And that this is something the government needs to get involved in, like should you have multi-gendered bathrooms? Should people born biologically male who go through gender reassignment surgery be able to compete in female sports? That sort of thing. So the government, progressives and liberals believe, can be a force for good. So you want a powerful government that is capable of being a useful force to bring good to a society that's very flawed. Liberals and progressives can be, just as conservatives and libertarians can be, systematically ideological. Some are not in all of those groups. Now we come to socialists and communists. And they absolutely are part of a systematic ideology. There is a set of beliefs that have been worked out since before the time of Karl Marx that explain how the universe works and how politics can play a role. Socialists and communists follow certain basic assumptions. First off, they tend to be materialistic. If it ain't matter, it don't matter. If you can't see, taste, touch, smell, or hear it, it's not real. The brain exists, the mind is a dream, a cloud cuckoo land fantasy like the soul. Materialism says that the body's needs trump the needs of conscience or free will, that the body's needs, feeding people, clothing them, sheltering them, giving them the opportunities to stay healthy, mentally and physically, are all government jobs, that the real world is the material world, that if you take care of the body, everything else will follow. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is if a person is not being fed, they won't really care much about politics because their hungry belly is insisting that they get food now. Second quality of socialists and communists, besides their focus on materialism, which is if it ain't matter, it don't matter. If it's not physical, tangible, detectable by senses, and measurable, it's not real, is utopianism. Socialists and communists believe that we can, by trying really hard and being really smart, make a better human being and a better society. That we can self-evolve, that we can decide that we are going to be a better kind of people than we have ever been. I know I covered this in the fall, but I'm reminding you because this is systematic ideology. A person lives in a flawed society, but if you dream the impossible dream of what a better world would look like, and what a better human being would look like who could live in that kind of world, you can decide what needs to be preserved and what needs to be changed, and you can start manipulating and shaping and pressuring and nudging and pruning off those parts of society and those aspects of human nature that are not suitable for utopia. In other words, we human beings can overcome, by being dedicated and smart, our own human frailty. We can overcome our own human weaknesses and our own human nature. That's utopianism. All socialists are materialists and utopians, so are communists. The third aspect is the dialectic. The dialectic's a principle of the German philosopher Georg Hegel, which is that progress comes from conflict. Everything that exists is its own thesis, and at some point it is challenged by its equal and opposite, its antithesis. And the antithesis and the thesis fight it out. And in that fight, both are changed, and whatever's left, whichever side wins, is a synthesis combining the strongest and best qualities of both sides. The thesis is gone. The antithesis is gone. What's left is the best qualities of the two that have been won through the conflict between the two. So all communists and many socialists believe that not only is conflict unavoidable, but conflict, especially revolutionary conflict, clarifies that conflict is in fact good and beneficial. Finally, it's socialist because the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. The needs of society as a whole come before any individual's ego. Your right to your own individuality, to your own way of doing things, is provisional. And the needs of the society can reach out and change your ability to live your life the way you want in order to make you live your life the way society needs you to live it for the greatest good to be given to the greatest number of people. The needs of society, not the needs of the individual, come first. Because by providing the physical needs of every member of the society, you're giving more and more people a better life. And that's worth giving up certain freedoms and certain choices, socialists and communists say. So, one last lecture for this week coming up next.